Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I've gotten a lot of requests lately to give some more in-depth tutorials about the different projects that we've done on the house, so this is the first one that I'm going to post, and it is how we made the built-in. I'm not going to waste any time, so let's get right into it. So the first step you want to take is to plan out what you're going to do. So for our space, we had a fireplace in the middle of the room, and we needed to measure how much space we had on each side of the fireplace to see what we needed to fill in with shelves. The space that you're working in might not necessarily be around a fireplace, so some other cool ideas are to do it around a window or just on a blank wall and to add a little bench in the middle. That would be a fun idea. And the second step is to search. This is the most important step if you're trying to do this on a budget like I did. You want to make sure you cover all of your bases to find exactly what you need. I 10 out of 10 recommend Facebook Marketplace. It's where I find all of my good budget deals. Also, for those who have been asking how I'm able to find some of these items on Facebook Marketplace for free, my recommendation is to look all the time. Me and Dylan would both be checking on our phones whenever we had a spare second, so it's definitely important to keep on looking to be able to find what you need. So I was on the hunt for 2 different shelving units that looked exactly the same because I wanted it to be symmetrical. And we actually got super lucky because we found a seller who was getting rid of 2 shelving units that were exactly the same in dimension, and they had their slight differences, but I knew that underneath they had the same structure and we would be able to make it work. So the third step is to prep whatever shelving units you ended up getting. This will look different for everyone. Ours had a lot of extra ornamentation on them, and they also had obviously the cabinet doors on one of them. So we had to do some prep work to make sure that they looked the way that we needed them to fit within our space. If the shelves that you got also have cabinet doors on the front, they should come off really easily with a Phillips head screwdriver or a drill. And if your shelving units have any added ornamentation on them that you don't want there, like some extra molding, you can usually get it off with a crowbar. We had to use an oscillating saw for ours because it wasn't coming off very easily, but usually the crowbar will do the trick. Once you get these extra pieces off, you're going to want to fill any holes that are there from the cabinet doors and also sand down any surfaces that are probably rough after you cut stuff off of them. If your shelving unit has these little holes on the side that let you adjust where the shelves go, I highly recommend filling those in and deciding where your shelves are going to go because it will give it a much more finished look in the end. We used this spackle that we already had for other projects in the house, and it worked really well, but you can get any sort of wood filler at Walmart for super inexpensive at any amount that you need. The shelving units that we got had this molding at the bottom of it that actually worked out really well for us because it gave it that finished look and it matched the trim in the rest of the room. So if yours doesn't have this, I would recommend going out and getting some. It's super inexpensive at Lowe's just to get some wall base. Another note is that I did paint the shelves before I put them into the unit since I was able to take mine out, and I painted them with my paint sprayer just to make it all go faster, but you can totally skip this step. And the fourth step is to measure everything. So obviously the shelving units that you get offline will probably not fit perfectly into your space. They'll probably be too short and also not wide enough. So you're going to want to measure the gaps on the side of your units to be able to know what kind of wood you need to get from the store to fill in those gaps. Our fireplace was not directly centered in the room, so we had to measure 2 different wood piece sizes for either side of it. While you're taking your measurements, it's also important at this step to figure out where your outlets are and to make sure that you cut some holes where they belong so that you can still use them. I did this by taking an old outlet cover and putting some paint on it and then putting my shelving unit up against it, so then I knew where I was supposed to cut the hole. I also recommend at this point in time, if you're comfortable enough, to start drilling your shelving units into the wall. To do this, you'll want to use a stud finder, which you can get for super inexpensive, like $5 at Walmart. And you just want to make sure that you drill your units into those studs because this will make sure that it's super sturdy and not going anywhere. It's also important to do this while you're taking your measurements to make sure that you get them exactly right. And step 5 is to go get those wood supplies that you need to fill in any of the gaps. This will look different for everyone, So we opted for some pine wood, and we got some that was 1.5 inches thick, and then the height and width measurements were based on what we needed them for. When you add the wood pieces to the side of the units, you want to make sure that they sit in front of them to cover the side. This will give it a much more clean look. And at the same time, you don't want there to be any gaps, so you're going to want to cut into your wall base to make sure that your wood is right up against your wall. And also, if your shelving unit has wall base on it like ours did, you want to cut into that as well to make sure that it is really in there and flush with the surface. We used some of this heavy-duty glue to attach it to the front of the unit and also to the wall next to it. We also added a piece of wood above the fireplace to use as a mantle, and we just had them cut it to the size that we needed based on our measurements. We opted to add another shelf as well, made of recycled wood. The wood that was used for the floor in the dance room just so happened to have the same thickness as the shelves that we had, so it worked out perfectly. All we had to do was just get some 2x4s, and we secured that to the wall in the back and also to the shelving units on the side, and to do that we used some heavy-duty glue and also drilled into it. We used those same 2x4s in the front of everything to cover up those blocks and to give it a more polished and thick look at the end. We also used those same 2x4s and attached them to the ceiling with some heavy-duty anchors so that we could put some molding on the ceiling and attach it to that. The molding that we got, we had to get it in 2 pieces because we could not fit a strip that long in our car, but we got it in 2 pieces and then ended up spackling it together in the center, and it worked out great. It's important to also add a shallow, wider hole with a drill bit when you go to attach your molding to the 2x4s on the ceiling. This will make it so that you can add some spackle to the holes and give it a finished look instead of being able to see the screws poking out. So step 6 is to add any finishing touches. So for us, that included adding some trim to the walls because our walls were definitely not straight. They were pretty warped. We also added that same trim around the fireplace on the floor since we had just added some new flooring and we wanted to clean that up. We also used some of the extra 2x4 pieces that we had lying around to fill in the gaps that are next to the fireplace, and then we just put a thin piece of plywood over top of this. This just gives it a much more built-in look, and we also added some wall base in front of it to really finish it off. Then we added an extra coat of paint just to clean everything up, and just to note, the paint that we used was the same exact paint that we used on our walls. If you use the same paint color as your walls, it will really give it that professional built-in look and give it a really modern feeling. We also added some white caulking to the sides and the top and the bottom and any other place on the built-in that needed it. This will just fill in any of the gaps and really truly make it look professional. If your built-in is not white, I recommend getting any sort of caulking that is paintable, and then you can just paint over it afterwards. We also got some LED lights from Walmart that we added in there just for fun. And of course, once it's done, you can decorate it however you want to. That is definitely the most fun part out of all of this. So in conclusion, our built-in only ended up costing us $40 because we had to buy some added wood and a few extra supplies. The cost may vary depending on the scale of your project and also what you end up doing with it, but overall this is a super affordable way to make a built-in in your home, and it can completely elevate your space, as you can see in my parents' home. I challenge you guys to try this in your own home. Even if it's a renter, you could probably find ways to make it renter friendly if you don't drill things into the wall and leave it freestanding. There are so many ways to make this DIY unique to your own home. You could play with colors or form or anything like that. If you do try this out, make sure to tag me. I would love to see you guys' creations. I would also like to note that I got some of the structure ideas for my built-in from a video on YouTube by This Old House, and I have it linked in the description of this video if you're interested in seeing more. Remember to stay you and also love what you do, and I will see you guys back here next week for some more fun DIYs and budget content.